Well, happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, September the 21st, already 2021. And welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. So, you got something to say about who should be Auburn University's next president? Well, you can. Say it, that is. The Auburn University Board of Trustees is looking to get input from staff, students, alumni, and community members on what Auburn should look for in its next president. The university will hold 8 listening sessions open to the public where you can share your thoughts about Auburn's next president. Sessions will begin today, as a matter of fact, and wrap up on September 30th. Sessions will be held on Zoom with an emphasis on a particular stakeholder group: staff, students, alumni, community members. Zoom links are listed on the Board of Trustees Presidential Search website. So, you got something to say? Say it. You got the avenue, the opportunity. So, when we go back to normal, or will we go back to normal, or what will be normal? We've talked about that a lot on this show, and mostly we feel there will be a new normal. And the New York Times agrees with us, which is smart of them, especially when it comes to commercial office real estate, including the legendary 102-story Empire State Building. It seems that economies once centered on the traditional 9-to-5 workday may face an uncertain future. So in the second quarter of 2019, nearly 1 million people visited the observatory in the Empire State Building. Now, like many other tourist attractions around New York City, the famous observatory is on the building's 86th and 102nd floor, sat nearly empty for months in 2020. Tenants who represent 41% of the building's office space said that when they return to the office, they will embrace a hybrid work model, giving employees the options to work remotely at least part of the time. The tenants who plan to return to the office full-time or otherwise have not settled on return to office plans represent just 2% of the office space. One tenant who's been in the building since 1990 said employees began working from home in March of 2020 and they never returned. When the lease expires this summer, when the lease expired this summer, he ended it. He said, "We found ourselves being able to work in ways that we couldn't imagine were possible before. We just thought for so long we needed an office to be efficient, and that's not true." So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. We'll see what the new normal ends up being. Those of us here at Tuesdays have been working remotely for quite some time. Enjoy it, and probably won't go back to anything close to what was the old normal. No getting up early to get dressed, no sitting in traffic. Our new normal will fall somewhere in between. So today's G-list guest is Mrs. Frances Tate, an artist and dreamer. When she dreams big dreams. Look forward to talking to her later in the show. The G-list is sponsored by Mainstream Financial Group. Mainstream Financial brings financial vision and clarity to your retirement plans. Are you recently retired? Are you thinking about retiring? Talk to the folks at Mainstream Financial. Don't let your money run out before you do. The edition of Tuesdays with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Who and what is Best Girl Inc.? Well, we'll let the voice.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly Gossom, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Creates the solution that fits your needs. So let's get to our roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Mychal Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards is a Mobile, Alabama native, currently living in Birmingham. She is involved in quite a few community activities that benefit many people throughout those respective communities. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning, Thom. How are you today?
I am doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So you say you're in Orlando today, huh?
I am in the home of Mickey and Minnie. Yes, I am in Orlando, Florida today.
You going to see Mickey?
No,
Are you going to
unless
see
they pass me on the street. Unless they pass me on the street, I won't see them. I'm not planning on going to Disney World, no.
I hear you. All right. So what's happening in your world?
Thom, I got a chance to attend the services, homegoing services for Dr. Harold Lee Franklin this past weekend. It was a beautiful, beautiful service. It was a great way to honor that great man. And so I did get a chance to do that before I left town to come to Orlando. Arrived in Orlando, and it was storming rain here when I arrived. So I got in on Sunday. And I got a chance to watch some TV. So I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Emmys this past Sunday night, but it was different. There was probably more diversity as far as the nominations were concerned, but there were not one diverse winner in the main telecast. Did you get a chance to watch it at all?
I saw a little bit of it.
Okay.
I generally don't watch it. I vote. I get the opportunity to vote, so I voted, and some of the selections I thought were like, "Wow, how did they win?" But,
exactly. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but some of the winners, that Ted Lasso, I never heard of it before. So I'm like, where did that come from?
I've heard of it. As a matter of fact, we've got the DVD came in, because I said I get to vote, so they sent me all that stuff.
Right.
And I didn't get past the first 5 or 10 minutes of that show. It was like,
it's interesting.
What is this?
The clips they were showing of the winners, as they were nominated, I'm thinking, how could this show possibly win anything? Again, that was just a very short clip, but it didn't catch my eye at all. So I'm just really curious. Now I've got to go back and watch at least one episode.
Well, good luck. Let me know what you think. I don't know. Comedies today aren't very funny.
True.
If you go back to some of the comedies that came along earlier that were, to me, funny.
I agree.
These are more silly than anything. So let's get Mychal Walker on here, and we'll get back to you, Barbara. Good morning, Mychal Walker. How you doing?
Good morning, Thom. I am doing well, thank you very much. And
Mychal Walker is president of the Walker Agency. He's in Atlanta, Georgia. So you're not in Orlando today. You're in Atlanta, Georgia. What's happening with you, Mychal?
Well, besides the rain that we're getting up here, I'd like to make everybody aware that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is extending open enrollment this year. And a lot of it has to do with COVID. Open enrollment begins November 1, but they're going to extend it to January 15. Normally, it goes till December the 15th. So that's going to give people an opportunity to make their decisions about their upcoming healthcare choices and give them a little extra time to do so.
And tell them those dates again, from November 1
to January 15th.
Okay. November 1 to January 15th. Okay,
Yes.
Go ahead, Mychal. Sorry for cutting you off.
That's quite all right. One other thing is, we all are well aware how important dental hygiene is. And there's a dentist out in Nevada that is trying to make a difference. A dentist by the name of Dr. David White. And what he has started is offering a membership plan. These have started already in healthcare for people that do not have health insurance. There's a membership by which they can pay so much a month and have the opportunity to go see a primary care physician. Well, Dr. David White has started to do the same thing in Nevada, where he is charging people without dental insurance they pay anywhere from about, say, $29, $30 a month, which adds up to being about $348 on a year. But they can go in and get 2 free exams, 2 cleanings, x-rays, an emergency exam, and services that are valued at $492. They also get a discount on other procedures of 20% for fillings and extractions. And they found that more and more people are coming there because they don't have dental insurance, but this gives them a way to do it. And if you want to know a comparison, if you have dental insurance, it costs right about $400 a year for dental insurance, or a little bit more, between $400 and $1,000 a year. The big difference in that membership program in dental insurance is that if you have dental insurance and you get a major procedure done, like a crown or something like that, your dental insurance will pay 80% of the cost, where this time it's a little bit, well, pay 50% of the cost, whereas in the membership, the client would pay 80%. It's an 80-20 type situation. But there are more and more dentists that are doing this.
Most of that major work that you say, there's a cap, and they're only going to pay up to a certain amount for the whole year, and then you're stuck with the rest of it. So maybe this membership thing might be good.
Yeah, that is correct. As a matter of fact, most traditional insurance for dental plans, the benefit limits are between $1,200 and $1,500 a year.
Right.
Ain't much you can get for that.
That's so true.
Don't get me started there. So let's talk a little bit. So you guys got your opportunity. The Board of Trustees has said, hey, at Auburn University, hey, you can come help select the next president. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I do plan on joining one of those listening sessions, Tom, and see what they have to say, and if we're really going to have some real input or not. You know, the Board of Trustees said they did the same thing when it came to renaming buildings. They talked to students, faculty, alums, community leaders, but when they recently made the decision not to remove the name Wallace Hall, they were just going to add a plaque. They said even though they talked to all those groups, they decided that their input really wasn't valuable to them. They had to go with their original mission, whatever that mission was, and so they chose to not.
Because I don't think the people voted for that, did they?
No, they did not.
I would doubt that.
No, they did not vote for that. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They basically said they asked for their opinions, but then they decided not to use the input.
Mychal worked at Bell South back when I did. And Mychal, you may not, but I was in the communications group. Every couple of years, we would do an employee survey, and we'd send it out across the 9 states and got everybody's opinion. And we'd get those opinions back, and we didn't like what they said, so we never told them what it was.
Absolutely.
We were told, no, you can't share that information with the employees. But the employees are the ones who gave us the information. That's okay. They don't need to know, you know? Yeah,
and that's the way a lot of companies and organizations work, Tom. They ask for opinions, but if it's not consistent with the thoughts that the board or the leadership had in mind in the beginning, then they just dismiss it. They don't use it. They never publicize it. So it's very interesting. They want you to feel like you have input, but do you really have any input?
Well, I don't know. Mychal, your thoughts?
Well, I just have to say, based on what Barbara just said in your discussion, is the reason why I'm not going to waste my time with this listening session. And so you guys said it more succinctly than I could say, and it keeps me politically correct. That's the reason why I'm not bothering to listen.
Okay.
I have other things to do because it's not going to make any difference.
Well, I thought it's very interesting too. They call it a listening session. So again, where's the input coming in? You're listening, but they're not listening to you. It doesn't sound like it to me. Now maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
That's why I'm not wasting my time. That was the word that popped in my mind. It says listening session. Well, I'm not going to waste an hour or 2 hours just to listen. So, to be to make myself feel like I have some input because I'm wasting 2 hours of my life to listen, okay, about a decision that they have already made. Nah, I'll pass.
Okay. Well, it sounded good.
It does. It really does. Sounds like the thing to do. But, Thom, that there have been surveys done in the past. There have been questionnaires and, task force and all of these things. But what really comes out of those is are they really listening? Are they really taking that input and doing something with it? Or are they basically just saying, okay, we appreciate that, but we have this other mission or this other directive that we need to go in? And it does become a waste. People feel like it becomes a waste of their time.
Let me go back to something you said earlier. And so the people, alumni, staff, professors, blah, 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 voted to keep the name Wallace Hall. Is that what came out of that?
No, that is not what came out of that. There was actually a petition signed with thousands of signatures on it. They have had sessions where the students, the faculty, the alumni, everyone made the decision that George Wallace's name should be removed from that building. And the Board of Trustees said that they didn't want to, what was the word they used? They didn't want to change history. They didn't want to remove history. They wanted to leave that in place and just tell the whole story is what they're saying. But again, that doesn't change how people feel about George Wallace's name being on that building.
Well,
that's just one of the names. That's just one example.
All right, let's move on.
Yes.
So let me ask you guys one other question before we go to our G list. So do you think that what do you think the new normal will be? Mychal, you pretty much work remotely and you operate in several states. Barbara, you're retired, but you operate remotely with all your community activities and so on and so forth. So what do you think? Will it work to go back to going into the office every day? I mean, if you didn't, I understand, but basically asking you, what do you think in general? Because your clients do that or what have you.
Well, I think it's probably going to be a little bit of mixture of both. I think it depends on what a person's role is. If you're more on the marketing and the external part of it, you probably will continue to work from a home office or something like that. And if you're dealing with more of operations and what have you, I can see them bringing those people back in, because in a lot of instances, especially in the insurance industry, we had a lot of breakdowns in efficiencies because a lot of people that deal with support and administrative stuff, they couldn't quite get their systems at home to be compatible with the system in the office in order to service the client or either an agent or a marketing person such as myself. So I can see that going that way. But on the other hand, if you deal more with external stuff, I can see you working from your home location. And then you have the cost factor involved. Commercial real estate is quite expensive. And a lot of these companies are finding out that they're able to even save a lot of money by ending the lease, like you mentioned in your monologue.
I think they'll save a lot of money on travel in the future. I don't think some of the travel that was borderline, maybe you don't need to do that right now. Maybe you don't need to go to Africa next week.
Right.
If you can't show some return for that,
right.
I think it will be different, and even the community things. I mean, it's going to be a while, as we're trying to have community fundraisers and so on and so forth. It's going to be a while before people feel comfortable.
I agree, Thom.
In a room with 200-300 people.
Yeah, even the ones that have moved forward and having some actual in-person events now, they're limited to a much smaller number. So that there can be a more social distancing. So I think we're probably living in the new norm right now. There, like Mychal said, there will be some mixtures of, people not returning to offices. And then there are some who feel like they're essential and have to be in the office or back into a workplace. So I think this is our new normal. I don't think we'll ever go back to the way where things were, where people were working and commuting and going to an office every day and felt like they had to do that, because they've learned so much since the pandemic that they've saving is time savings, money savings, and actually in some instances productivity have increased because people are not having to take that time and the stress of driving to and from work. So it has been beneficial to companies to work in this type of environment.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'd like to share with you just another segment of the COVID impact. Is like with the association that I'm involved with, the National Association of Health Underwriters. Every year around February, we go to DC and have our national conference where we go and visit what we call the Hill, where we speak with our elected officials, senators and congressmen about healthcare and what's going on. Well, right now, we're planning to have an in-person conference in February. However, that main segment where everybody from across the country comes into DC so that they can go and have that one-on-one time with their congressman or senator and what have you. Well, right now, the Capitol is still shut down and it's closed, and we do not know if it's going to be open back up by February or not. So they're not accepting any visitors or people to come in to the Capitol now, or to the senatorial business or congressional offices. So we're in a situation where we're trying to make a decision where we need to do our conference because of content and other things to help agents and consumers and what have you. So we're looking at doing two things. One, we're going to still move forward with an in-person, but we're going to have a virtual segment as well, so that people that are afraid to travel or can't travel due to COVID restrictions can maybe come in. And then the other side of that is that we're trying to reach out to Congress to find out if we were to do that, would the members of Congress be available virtually, or could they come to us if we can't come to the Hill? So that's just another area that we will have to grapple with.
Yeah, I think it'll be, for a while, it'll be a combination of trying to have smaller in-person groups, but being able to reach the larger audience through virtual if you need to.
Yeah, and one other thing, on my meeting yesterday, we were told, because I'm on the budget committee and I've got to go up to DC next week for a meeting, we were told that if you come, when you come, that in our office where we're meeting, DC has a mask mandate inside as well, unless you can sit more than 3 feet from everybody. And due to the small room that we're meeting in to discuss the budget, we're unable to do that. So we're going to have to sit in our meeting, which is a day and a half, with a mask on while we're there. In addition, we were told that if you plan on going out to restaurants to eat, you're going to have to show proof of vaccination. So we need to either bring our vaccination cards with us or a photograph on our phone so that we can show them when we get to the restaurant that we have been vaccinated. Or we may just have to eat in our rooms.
Well, I mean, I think rather that than be sick.
Absolutely.
True. Or get somebody else sick. And
right.
What's really interesting too, how things have changed. Because I remember when I started my business, I started in a remote office. And I did that for about 6 months. But it was very obvious at that time that that wasn't cool. That wasn't viewed as being at a professional level, you know. And so I ended up getting an office, and it was better because people could see me. I was downtown, people could see me, and blah, 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 blah. But it's amazing now how that has changed.
Shifted,
and,
yes.
People respect the fact if you're remote. And I think one of the things to me that's happened during the pandemic is there have been more small businesses, startups. People are going out there taking that chance that they wouldn't have taken before this, that they didn't take before this, and feel like they can make it work. And hopefully it is for the majority of them. Anything else for me? Go ahead, Mychal. You got something there?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback off of what you said about, when you started your business, and like yourself, I started my business a long, long time ago. But when you're a startup company and you don't have a big budget, you have to do a remote office or office in your home. That's the way to start on a shoestring budget, so to speak. But you're you were looked down upon as if you didn't have a real business if you did that, and you had to have so many different things to show your credibility or your credentials that you are really in a business, and then they would say, well, you don't have a staff and a place for people to come to. And now it has morphed into the point where now a sole source provider or a person that is a solo person in business, they can have what you call a virtual office, where you have an office that you can go to if you need to meet somebody, or a conference room, otherwise, and you have a professional mailing address, in a business location and all of that, so that you're looked upon as a legitimate business, but you can still be working from home, but you have that professional business address, and then you can go meet somebody there. So it's funny how perceptions are changing during time, and now COVID is going to really push that forward. So that's one part of real estate I think would probably take off, is virtual office building.
Yes.
That, and I remember when you couldn't, if you had a PO box address, then you wasn't a real business.
Real business,
Yes.
Right. Right.
Now everybody
has one.
Yes.
It's amazing how things move along and how perceptions change, and how, when you wanted to be in that big building downtown, that was the thing, to be in the big building. And the big building in Birmingham that we all wanted to be in is now sitting empty.
I know.
In downtown Birmingham. Not because of the pandemic, but because of whatever finances or what have you. And I want to go back to something you said, Mychal, when you first starting out, and you said, and you look at your budget, and I'm like, what is that? I mean, you had a budget when you first started.
Thom, you did?
I did, yeah. I just,
Hey,
it wasn't a lot. Let me put it that
you
way.
can have a budget of zero. You just have to know it's zero.
And you can have a budget on paper.
You're right.
And not live by it. I've always felt like, I remember I told that it's not a big mystery how to make money. It's not a big mystery to me how to grow money. You just have to have money to make money,
Right.
Yes, true. Very true.
I don't think you got to be a genius to figure it out. You just got to have something to work with.
Yes, yes,
So.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you one thing, and this is a personal experience, is that you talk about the box office and all that. Well, I have an address I've had for almost 15 years like that. It's in a business location, but it's a P.O. box like a UPS store where you go there and what have you. And so that's the address that I use. But I use that for a reason, because if everybody knows your physical office address, they'll look you up and they'll just stop by and cold call and just break in on you. And I had a gentleman that was in Atlanta that wanted to meet with me. We'd spoken on the phone, and he took it upon himself just to stop by my office, but he went to the one that was located in the shopping center, and he called me up and said, I tried to come by your office, but it's in the same place where Lifetime Fitness is. I said, yes, I have a remote office. I have an office I can meet you. I just don't give that out to everybody.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. It's changed, and I think it'll continue to change. But somehow or another, we'll figure out, and the smart real estate people will figure out how to change those office buildings into condominiums
Right.
and so on and so forth. So we'll adjust.
Yes.
But hopefully it won't hurt people too bad. Hopefully it'll be fun while we're adjusting. So let's move on. Let's go talk about the G List, where everybody is a star. Is sponsored by Mainstream Financial Group, and let's hear from Mainstream.
Mainstream Financial Group provides financial services for both individuals and businesses. Mainstream's mission is to understand the unique needs of every client and work closely with you, assembling a team to develop and manage your resources to help you accomplish your defined financial goals. Mainstream's financial professionals will provide you with a complimentary, no obligation financial review. Now, these professionals can then offer you custom advice to mend together the pieces of your financial life and come up with a plan that is truly comprehensive. Mainstream Financial assists retirees and those close to retirement in planning for a secure retirement so not to run out of money during your lifetime. You can take advantage of opportunities with tailored advice and the resources to act on it. Mainstream Financial Group, www.mainstreamfg.com, 205-324-0589.
Mainstream Financial Group. Don't let your money run out before you do. So let's get to our G List guest for today. Remember, Hollywood has the A List, and here on Tuesdays with Tom, we have the G List, where everybody is a star. Today, our G List guest, Mrs. Frances Tate. She is an artist. She grew up in Decatur, Alabama, and is an alumnus of the Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University. She earned a degree also in psychology from Athens State. She's a dedicated community leader and civic advocate, and we're going to talk about a vision for a project that she has. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about her art. Good morning, Ms. Tate. Frances, how are you?
I'm fine, Tom. How are you?
I am doing fine, and I'm going to steal your word and say I am delighted to talk to you this morning.
So am I.
Good. Well, I stole your word, so you said it first.
It's okay, Tom.
Okay. So tell me about your art and how you got started and where you are going with it next.
Well, Tom, we got started. You know, I travel all over the United States doing audit work for Bell South, other telephone companies, after I retired from Bell South. So as I traveled the United States, I realized and was fascinated how other states did preservation. They had these wonderful museums, these wonderful art museum, historian museum. And I got to thinking, the community I grew up in is a fascinating community. So why aren't we preserving this history? So during the 80s, HUD came through and tore most of the structures down. Now, Old Town was just like your typical historical district. So most of those houses could have been preserved, but they did not. So I decided, well, what I'll do, I am going to paint and draw all the houses again. So I decided to paint all of the churches. And you know, we had a church on every other corner. And next to the church was a grocery store. So,
and let me just say, make sure for those who don't know, we're talking about Decatur, Alabama, and Old Town is a community in Decatur.
Right, right, and it's called the Old Town community. And this community had everything you needed but an upscale clothing store. We had doctors, we had our own doctors, dentists, lawyers. We had service stations, beauty shop, restaurant. We even had a movie theater in this little community. And this community is only 10 blocks long. So you can imagine everything was compact. Everybody was next to each other, but it was wonderful growing up. So I decided, okay, they've torn it down, but I can draw them. So I start drawing and painting all of these buildings, all of the restaurants, all of the churches. And I decided to use the water from the Tennessee River because Old Town is sitting on the Tennessee River. So I go down to the Tennessee River and dip my water for my watercolor paintings.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember we talked one time the significance of the water from the river.
That is, to me, it's symbolic of the community. It is symbolic of the unity and the flow of the community. That is what, when I think of tranquility, when I think of the water.
Now let me just, and you and I have been involved with, not just you and I, the community has. You guys have asked me to kind of come up and be involved. So tell us about the Scottsboro Boys Museum that's planned for the Decatur community.
Well, Thom, I had decided, and we've had several art shows. I have painted probably 350 pictures already. And we normally have an art show every September. And we have gathered all of this wonderful information from all of the business in Old Town. We got all, the advertisements. We got artifacts. So I thought, what good is this information in all of these pictures doing anybody sitting in my house? So I approached the board and I told the board, I said, listen, we are building a museum. They said, what? I said, we are building a museum. How are we going to do it? I know how we're going to do it. I know where we're going to get the property. So after I discussed all this with the board, they were on board with it. And we are super excited. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been in the community a couple of times in the last 3-4 weeks, and I can agree with you that people are really excited, and it could be a great thing for the community. You have an interest. There's a civil rights trail in Alabama that goes really from South Alabama up to North Alabama, but doesn't really come past you guys. Right. And so you're looking to be at the northern end of Alabama Civil Rights Trail.
Absolutely. We are going to, because the trail stops in Birmingham. So there's the void from Birmingham through Coleman, everywhere. So we're going to just join the Civil Rights Trail. So we will be the first stop coming north.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Let me get Mychal and Barbara on and let them ask a couple of questions, and then we'll come back. And anything we don't cover that you want to cover, feel free to throw it in as well.
Okay.
So, Barbara, you got any questions for Mrs. Tate?
Yes. Good morning, Mrs. Tate. How are
Good
you
morning,
today?
Barbara. Fine. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining us today. And this is so exciting. I was looking back at the history of Old Town. Can you tell us a little bit about how the city got started, that area? I think the first lot was sold in like 1821 or something.
Absolutely. Old Town is the very first community that was established in the city of Decatur. In this community, Old Town, the very first hospital that was built in the city of Decatur was built by Dr. Willis E. Sterl. He's a Black physician and surgeon. He built the very first hospital sitting right on Vine Street in Old Town. I mean, it's so many firsts in Old Town. We have these wonderful, wonderful architecture, buildings, and structures that, well, as a child, who noticed buildings? But as I grew older, I thought, what a jewel. And we have such rich history. Old Town, the only active state building is in Old Town. And that building was built by the slaves. Wonderful architecture. You need to go by and see it, Tom. That is the only active old state bank building left in Decatur. It's in Old Town. The oldest two houses in the city of Decatur, they're in Old Town. So it's all of this wonderful history from Old Town that I want to preserve.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Mychal?
Well, good morning, Miss Tate. Thank you.
Good morning.
I have to say I admire you. You sound like an entrepreneur because you were an artist and you did all these pieces, but there was no museum to display it. So you decided to just build your own museum so you could go and display your artwork.
Precisely. But, when you think of, we have wonderful historians here in Decatur. They have information. I have information. She has information. Well, when we leave here, where's all this information going to go? It will be lost. Yes. So I decided we need to preserve all of this information so it will live beyond our lifetime. And just to mention how popular Decatur is, in 1935, just think of this. In 1935, Dr. George Washington Carver was in Decatur. He did the baccalaureate address for the graduation class in 1935. He was at the Princess Theater. And the only time the Princess Theater, with the integrated audience, the only time the Princess Theater had 1,000 people in it was in 1935 when Dr. Carver came to Decatur.
Wow.
So we have interesting, all kind of history
Rich
that we
history.
need to preserve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
And Mrs. Tate, I know I'm sorry, go ahead, Mychal.
Go ahead. That's all right.
I was going to say, you got involved in art. After you retired, you became an artist, but I'm sure you were actually an artist before that time. When did you actually get involved? When did you decide to?
Listen, absolutely not, Barbara.
Really?
When I went to school, we didn't even have an art class. So I had no idea I would love art. You're not exposed to it. How do you know?
True.
So believe it or not, I picked up my first paintbrush 19 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing because you're just a phenomenal artist. I've seen your works and it is beautiful.
Well, Barbara, I was determined I was going to learn. I was determined I was going to learn how to draw and paint. And that was my goal. And I did it 8-9 hours every day.
Wow.
That's what I did to learn to paint and draw.
That's great.
Yeah.
Mychal, you had a thought earlier?
Well, yeah, I did. But this brings me to something else. As you mentioned, you didn't have a course or a curriculum when you were in school for art. So how did you discover, one, that you had a talent for drawing, and two, you were what they call self-taught? And correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know anything about an artist. I'm not an artist. But aren't there certain steps or processes you're supposed to go through in order to create something? Tell me about that process.
It is amazing. Once you learn the basic, Mychal, your perception is totally different. I look at things now that you see every day, but you don't see. If you look at an ear of corn, you think of just an ear of corn you to eat. If you look at that ear of corn, you will see those grains are set perfectly in that ear. I never noticed that before. I look at everything as totally different light. And if you learn the basics, even though you have all this art stuff on TV and do all these other, you need to learn the basics. You need to learn how to mix colors, not just go by the color you want. You need to learn. If you learn all those basics, you'll have it.
Okay.
And practice, practice, practice. Now, for some people, it just came natural. For me, it did not.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a week to learn a stroke to do a leaf, but I was determined I was going to learn it.
It's great.
Yeah. I can say that I have never been very good at art.
Me either.
Let me tell you something.
Being an artist.
You can learn to do anything you want to do. I learned to start painting when I was in my 60s. So you can learn to do anything you want to do if you want to do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. So let me ask you a little bit. There's a significance to this museum. We're talking about the Civil Rights Trail, and that has to do with the Scottsboro Boys trial that was infamous and actually originally took place in Scottsboro, but ended up in Decatur. And you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. The second trial started in Decatur. The house, and we know James Horton, Judge Horton, he was the judge. He's the one that sustained the execution so they would not be executed because the evidence did not warrant an execution. It really didn't warrant anything, but it tells the truth about the trial. But the trials happened in Decatur. Victoria Price and Ruby Bates were the ladies who accused the 9 young guys of raping them. Ruby Bates was housed in a house in Old Town. The house is still standing. So the city really owned the house, and they didn't want it. They didn't upgrade it. They didn't maintain it at all. So it took me about 9 months, but I was able to acquire that house and the adjacent property. So we have the house that Ruby Bay stayed in, and the trial happened in Decatur. And that history needs to be preserved. For some reason, everybody wants to put it under the rug. But history is whatever history is, whether it's good or bad. And I think this is a jewel for this city to honor these Scottsboro boys, Judge Horton, and the community was so, Old Town community was so involved. During the trial, all of the reporters who came in, the Black reporters who came to Decatur to cover the trial, they had to be bused from house. Of course, they stayed with the Black people, and they had to be bused from house to house to house because the Klans wanted to kill them. They had a guard to stand all night in order to protect them. The Klans went up and down the neighborhood, the Old Town neighborhood, shooting up the homes, and a young 16-year-old boy was killed during the trial because when they was rampage terrorizing the neighborhood, you got caught in a crossfire. That was just tough. So the Old Town neighborhood was impacted by the trial. So that is how Old Town, I'm trying to connect the Old Town neighborhood with the Scottsboro boys because it was impacted because of the trial.
Okay. Barbara, Mychal, any questions?
Well,
I wanted to ask you, how can people get involved? How can they help you? I know you're in the process now of trying to get the museum started, and is there any way others can help if they're interested?
Absolutely, Barbara. We have a website. It's sbcmuseum.org or SBC Museum, P.O. Box 802, Decatur, Alabama, 35602. You can you can send us emails, whatever you need to. We want everybody, the whole community, the whole state, the whole United States to be involved in this project, because this is the project that has to happen. It has to happen. So we are in phase 1 now, and then we're going to phase 2.
And let me say, I think that it's a very, very worthwhile project. I think you'll see, we'll certainly keep you updated on this show and try to keep people updated as we go. But there will be calls to action for many people who live in and out of Decatur. And I'm sure we will be in Birmingham, which is, just an hour and a half or so away. Right. So certainly there will be opportunities for organizations, sororities, fraternities, businesses, and so on and so forth to be involved in this. The community is behind it. I think it will be a great project, not just for Decatur, but for the state of Alabama and across the civil rights. There are civil rights trail extends into 13 states. There are 55 monuments or museums in those states that recognize what happened in terms of civil rights and civil rights history. And so we want to do that in North Alabama as well.
And Thom, let me just mention, please, that the legal aspect of the Scottsboro trial is so important that people understand these legal aspects came out of the trial. And it is probably one of the most important trials. The legal aspect, where you had to have legal representation and you had to have a jury of your peers. Because just to think now, the trial, Scottsboro Boys trial, there was absolutely not a Black name on the roll or the roll, period. Although 3 lists was given to them of Black people, doctors, lawyers, and dentists and shop owners, none were qualified. But these rulings made it possible so you could have a jury of your peers, and you had to have legal representation. I just wondered if those 9 boys realized what they was going to change the whole world. Wow.
Well, and the other thing in terms of that is, although it became legal or acceptable for Blacks to be on juries, think the courage that those men at the time had to have to step up and serve on that jury. Yes. Because if you served on that jury, the Klan knew you were now on this jury. They knew who you were, where you were, what you did, where you lived, so on and so forth. So it was an incredible historic moment in the history of the state of Alabama and in the city of Decatur, Alabama.
Yes.
And as you say, sometimes you take something as negative as being accused of rape, and you don't even know these 2 women, you've never seen them before, and to have the legal precedents that came out that now ensures every defendant of adequate counsel, and also assures people of a jury of their peers. It's pretty phenomenal.
Yes, it is.
Certainly historical. Francis, would you like to sum up with something that you'd like to leave us with?
Just thanks for having me. And this project It's a project that I'm so excited about. It is going to revive Decatur, the community. Old Town community will be revived. And the city will economically, everybody will benefit from this project. Not just the Old Town community, the whole city and surrounding cities also will benefit from this project.
All right. Anything else from either one, Mychal or Barbara?
I just want to thank Ms. Tate for being with us today and sharing this information. This is wonderful. If anyone is interested in purchasing your art, is that available on your website, or how can they get that?
It is, but none of the originals will ever be sold.
Okay.
You can buy print, but you cannot have an original. All of the originals will go to the museum and will be there forever.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mychal, you good?
I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming to visit with us today. And I wish you the best in your endeavors, and you truly are an inspiration.
Thank you, Mychal. I appreciate that.
Francis, I will talk with you later, and I plan on seeing you on Monday.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk about that. So,
Okay.
thank you so much. Let me just sum this little part up right here and say that some people, you consider yourself a go-getter and somebody who goes out and does things, and then you meet some people sometimes who are just fascinating, and Francis is fascinating. So thank you.
We blush, Thom.
Thank you for what you're doing, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So thank you so much, and we're going to move on to our closing.
Thank you.
Okay. My closing commentary, or as I see it, is last week we had Roger Mychal on, and he talked about the golf tournament that the Auburn Football Letterman's Club was having, with proceeds going to the James Owens Foundation and the family of Lee Carpenter. And so I think that tournament is today. I wish them well. You couldn't find two more classy guys than James or Lee, and I wish their families well. And so hopefully everything turns out well. And also I'd like to mention two more guys who were teammates who now have some who are doing well physically, have some illnesses. And that's Ed Butler and Randy Walls. Randy was our quarterback on the Amazons, and just a great athlete. And Randy, if you're out there, hello, man, and I wish you well. And the same with Ed. Randy lived down the hall from us, and and Ed was Ed played as a freshman. Who in 1972 was the first year that freshmen could play varsity ball. Ed was one of the two or three freshmen that got a chance to play. He was a tight end. He was really good, but more importantly than any of that, he's a quality human being. And I love and respect both of them. And so we wish you guys the best. So let me finish with three more of the Native American 10 Commandments. I gave you three last week. I'll give you three more today. Number one, remain close to the Great Spirit. Number two, give assistance and kindness wherever needed. And number three, do what you know to be right. And that's how I see it for this Tuesday, September 21, 2021. And that's our show for today. I want to thank the audience. We appreciate you guys being with us. I want to thank Mychal and Barbara. Thank our G-list guest, Mrs. Frances Tate, for that and that historical message and for what is going on in the city of Decatur. Our upcoming G-list guests on Tuesdays with Thom are Sam Johnson next week. I call Sam the man with the big smile. I look forward to having him. After that, we'll have David Shifter, who's a film producer who just wrapped a film called Black Gossom. And we look forward to that. And then Marshall Walker, who is the brother of Jackie Walker, who was honored outside of Neyland Stadium at the University of Tennessee with a statue of his brother, Jackie Walker. So I want to thank our sponsors, Best Girl Inc. and Mainstream Financial Group. Again, you know somebody who'd make a great guest on TWT, then please refer them to us at Thom at Best Girl or Emily at Best Girl. I want to thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator. She's our producer. Thanks, Sean Jones. She's the organizer. Remember, enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.